Hey folks, Finless Bob here, and it's time to install my Triaxis RT adjustable handlebars. It's quite a job, but I've studied it pretty well, and I want to thank some Spyder lovers folks who sent me some pictures and some help. So I'll be using that as I go along. Pardon me. Now, one thing I will not be doing, because there's plenty of videos, is I will not be showing some of the panel removal because there's many videos already on that. Removing the mirror. So let me just show you what has to happen. Got to remove the mirrors. Got to remove this service panel. Got to remove this panel. Got to remove this panel. You're going to remove the front fairing. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Then underneath there's an acoustic panel on each side that you will be removing. Now Sean Smoke, S-M-O-A-K, on YouTube has a video showing doing this on the 2014, and it's called Takedown Top Fairing Removal. He's basically showing how to remove this whole fairing to replace a defective key switch on a 2014. He gets you all the way there, including removing the glove box assembly. After that, he edited the video, and he doesn't show some of the stuff like the headlight adjusters and some of the other stuff to get the fairing off. So what I'll do is, once I get all those panels off, rather than repeat his video, and I'll give some tips along the way if I need to, probably also removing that because he cuts some tie wraps and shows things that are not totally clear, which I'll probably give some tips on. But then I will certainly go into the details of doing the handlebars and everything. Now, one thing about these handlebars is, just so you understand why it's also quite a job, is the handlebars are not what you call full handlebars. They're made up, it's a composite handlebar setup. So it's made up of parts. You notice I have no grips or anything, or the throttle controls. They bolt onto there. So really, I don't know, I'd even call it a handlebar because it's not one bar. It's a composite made up of a bunch of parts. So that makes the job a little more difficult because we got to take things off here. We got to remove all this. We're going to have wiring everywhere. Anyway, I hope my video will be a little more helpful than some of the information out there for anybody wanting to do this job. I will also let you know how long it took me, and again, I'll try to share as much details as possible. I don't take a video showing removing screws. I expect you to be able to do that. I'll just show you what to remove and where, and go from there. Another thing I recommend is when you take screws off, try to keep them organized. There's long ones, short ones, different kinds, things like that. So what I try to do is, with the panels, put the screws. With the panels, put the screws. That way I don't get mixed up, and I see a lot of guys posting they had screws left over. Usually they're behind this mirror is where I've noticed. I'm missing some from my dealer who didn't put them on. But anyway, I'm babbling now, so let's get busy. I'm going to remove all the panels all the way around, like I said, and we'll come back, take a look. Okay, so I may show some panel removal, but I don't know if I'm going to add this, but may make the video too long. But pop the mirrors. Remove this screw, which holds on this panel. This screw down here, which holds on this panel. Pop the little push pin. Remove this panel. Be careful of that switch that you don't bend it removing it. Remove this screw here. I also removed this screw here, which is part of the front fairing. Since we have to do that, I was just there. Then you come around here and you remove this screw right here, and that releases the panel. You do not mess with these. They just pop into grommets, okay? So at this point, I'm holding the camera. This panel will come right off. Pop it out of the grommet, see? Once again, I'm putting my screws where the panel goes, all right? I put the screws for the front fairing over here because I haven't pulled it off yet, all right? So we got to remove this screw for the front fairing. Now, Sean Smoke showed removing a screw under here, and you will have to do that. It's right up under here, but mine is missing. I did not remove it. It wasn't put on by the dealer when I assembled my bike. Same thing under here. That screw was missing on mine. But those you'll need to remove, okay? So that'll get off the side and the fairing. We will also be removing, we do not need to remove this panel. We'll also be removing this acoustic cover. Screw here, screw under here, which I haven't removed this panel yet. We'll get those off, all right? Okay, acoustic panel off. Now, because we didn't remove the frunk, which Sean Smoke showed removing before that panel, I think, getting the acoustic panel out was a little twisty because the rubber grommet, or the thing that fits back here, was being bound. So all I did was remove this push pin, pull this panel away, and the acoustic panel came right out. Okay? All we got to do now is repeat on the other side. It's exactly the same. Okay, so we've got all those panels off. As I said, by the way, here's what I call a Finless gotcha. When I showed you what screws to remove for the panels, I forgot I'd already removed my wind deflectors. Now I have the adjustables, but it's the same process. There's 2 screws. So in order to get that side panel off, you got to remove those. So as you see, everything off all the way around. Now, I tend to kind of look at stuff to see how to get at it. I could use the service manual, but I like to learn by looking too. So one thing I will tell you is, let me turn this flashlight on. The front, this top fairing is held on in the front by a bolt right here, and there's one bolt in the same place behind, see if I can see that, behind the electric frunk release. Now some of the guys that did this on a 2014 or didn't have this don't have this in the way. It basically just mounts to the release system here. So you could remove these and pull that whole unit off. But it appears I'm going to be able to get in there with an extension maybe and a socket. Getting it back in might be interesting. However, with that said, let me say something. Since I've had stuff off of here before, like to put in the JMI speakers, I'm noticing a screw here. If I remove the front bezel, which is easy, 4 screws, and this just comes off, and you unplug your gauges if you had them. You just unplug them. It looks like this panel can be removed, giving access to possibly this without removing the whole fairing. I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's just a couple more screws. It snaps together here because I've had it out before. So this screw here and removing that front bezel may allow me to get this facade off here and see what's under there. So I'm going to go ahead and try that. If not, we will continue the procedure where we remove the glove box and everything. But I'm going to give it a try anyway. If there's a simpler way, let's do it. But anyway, I'll let you know. Never mind. Even though I removed those screws and kind of poked around here, this panel, even after you remove this, is all part of this underhood with the card. I even tried to remove these screws, and then once I got in there, there's some screws from the back side, which means you'd have to remove this whole windshield and everything to get that out. So, we're going to remove the whole fairing. So, let's get at it. Okay, so first we need to remove the glove box, which will include this panel and the switch panel. Alright, these pins we can leave in because it's part of the whole glove box assembly. We will be going after a 10mm bolt here. Be careful dropping it into the engine. 10mm bolt here. If you see any wires attached, I have my aftermarket GPS cable that I had zip tied here, so I had to cut that zip tie. Basically, I shoot these videos so I know in reverse too. So I'm going to remove that, and then when we get to the other side, I'll remove those and talk about some cables that need to be cut. Or not cables, but tie wraps. Okay, so I removed the same bolts on this side. Now we need to do some cable tie cutting. One is, there's 3 tie wraps, one here, and one here, that hold the cable that opens the glove box in here. Okay, so what you do is you pop this. I'm trying to show as best I can. You pop this out of that groove, and then you'll see that rubber cap on there. Hopefully I can show this. That rubber cap, you pull that down off of the cable, and it pulls the cable out of this fork right here. Alright, be careful with the plastic retainer, don't break it, as well as the plastic that feeds into this notch and holds that cable in position. Anyway, we got our tie wraps cut. We've got all that out of the way. Yeah, so that's how that works right there. The cable goes, this thing goes into the fork, and then to keep that from coming off, this snaps around it, and then that keeps that ball or barrel from coming out of the fork. Alright, hope that makes sense. Just be careful doing this, you don't break this or anything else that retains that, because if you broke this, you're going to be buying a new cable because it's made around it. Alright, in other words, this barrel swaged on here. They put this on and then swage that barrel. Alright, so the next thing we got to do to get the glove box out is we got to cut this cable tie and this cable tie, they're big ones, and then unplug this connector. This is your switch harness up here to your glove box. So let's go ahead and do that, and at that point we should be able to pull this out of here. Don't forget this push pin here on both sides as well. We should be able to get this out of here, so let's try it and see how it goes. So that was pretty easy. Cable just slid right out there. Unplugged this harness with the cable. There it is right there. And basically I just grabbed it and it slid it back, and as you can see it's way back. Now I do have one hang up. When I ran my GPS audio cable, I ran it through a hole on the other side. So I'm going to have to do a little more work. You know, this is an afterthought kind of thing. I ran this cable never thinking that I'd have an issue tearing the Spyder apart after running it. So I got to figure out how to do that without stripping the whole bike and pulling my cable. Anyway, and I certainly don't want to pull it out of there. If you saw my other video where I had the cable tucked up and hid, because that was a pain in the neck. Anyway, so we've got the glove box off. Let's continue. So my aftermarket stuff I put on myself got in my way. The GPS cable that I had run up through the glove box and up to my dash, first off was wrapped around here. I'm not going to go into it as a simple push pin to separate these two and get the cable out. I will run it differently next time so I can remove that. Additionally, for my alarm system, I added an arm LED right here. So, and I could easily remove that too, but I figure I'm just going to slide this back. No need to just totally remove it off the bike. So we've gotten this far now. I had to remove this side panel to unplug the GPS cable, which is over here per my GPS video. All right, so now we continue. We're going to get those two front bolts. We have the headlight adjusters to get off of there, and I think, and a couple other connectors, and I think we will be done getting the fairing top off, but we shall see. Okay, so I removed the two bolts down in there. Major pain. Had to use, you can't, even with a shorty socket, the socket wrench, let me explain, the socket wrench diameter here won't fit in the stupid little notch out they made and get a socket on there, and let alone allow you to turn it. Okay, sorry for the camera move. So what I had to do is use a handle, long extension, come down through here, and a swivel on the socket. That allowed the socket to be straight on the bolt, have a slight swivel, and come out here. So I was easily able to get those out with that setup. Again, ratchet, long extension with a swivel on it. Okay, so you're gonna, before you start this, make sure you've got one. This was basically the setup here. I used this to get the screws out the rest of the way once I loosened them up, but there was a swivel here on the socket. All right, so now we continue. Basically, we're loose up here, as you see. All right, we've got the headlight adjuster cables. They come out right here. I basically just used a crescent wrench to remove that nut and put it back on here so I didn't lose it. And this is an interesting arrangement. Looks like a hinge or something to allow you to flip this up, maybe? I don't know. But if you look, it's made almost like a hinge. I almost want to try it. Not that yeah, something else is hanging up. We'll have to see. Oh, I see more cables here, so we'll have to figure that out. Anyway, oh yeah, my sidebowl horn. But anyway, that looks like a hinge. But to get that off of there, we're going to have to remove this. Same thing on the other side. So I'll continue as I probe around to get there, and we'll keep you informed. OMG, man, what a bitch getting that off. So once I let me get over here. So once I unplugged this huge bunch of harness connections down in here that run up to the console, pardon me, it was all loose. But for some reason, when I tried to pull it up, I couldn't get it to come out. The reason being is I did have to remove the front latch electronic mechanism. This bracket was, because of this hinged part here, this bracket was coming up at an angle, or this thing that mounts here. So you have to pull it up to get the tangs unhooked from here. So you got to lift it up far enough to then be able to pull it out from underneath here. Wish I could have shown the process. There was no way. When they say get a friend to help you, that thing's heavy, okay? So get a friend to help you. But I had to remove the front latch, which was no big deal, all right? And of course that came with the electronic unit. No big deal. But once I got that out, then I could lift this front part high enough to pull forward, get those tangs, and I'll show you in a minute, out from under here. What I'm talking about is, I think I showed in the other video, I thought it looked like it was hinged. Why they did it this way, I just have no clue. But it's, can't see right here, but it's these tangs right here, because they bolt here to the bracket, so you got to slide them out from underneath that bracket, this U-shaped bracket, to get it out. The only way to do that, again, You have to lift this up far enough to pull forward. I could not lift this up far enough to pull forward with the trunk latch in the way. So you will be removing that. By the way, it's 2 bolts, 2 nuts. Pretty darn simple. I left the bolts there, just took the nuts off. Done. Alright, so we are to this point, and so far not a bad job really. You know, I didn't really look at the service manual too much. When I was having trouble lifting it out of there, I'm like, what the heck? Then I took, the service manual didn't really help, so I took a look and saw what was interfering, and it was that trunk latch. So anyway, not too bad if I do say so. Few connectors, couple tie wraps, not a big deal. I would say this was the hardest part so far, and it was a heavy unit. I'm big enough I was able to lift it myself, but that was the stickler. But hopefully this video will help someone do it themselves when the time comes. I showed you all the bolts, nuts, and connectors to unplug, so that's all you need. Don't forget that trunk latch. Now we will dig into the unknown, past the video of Sean smoke. So here we go. By the way, folks, one thing that held me up taking this off was my aftermarket lights I had put on the mirrors here. I got the show chrome ones, but I believe the trick LEDs are the same, and I'm talking about these lights right here, okay? You run wires up and you tap into the mirrors, right? So you basically use those taps on the turn signal, and if you hook up running, if you watch my video on installing them, pardon me, using my foot, I'm tired of bending over, I tapped into for the running lights, I tapped into this light right here behind the headlights. So basically I had to loosen the headlights from this unit to undo my wiring for these running lights on the fenders. So as you see, they're hanging there. So just a word, my personal opinion here is if I hadn't told my service guy and he was doing this job that I had those lights hooked up there, he might have went to remove that unit and ripped them all up, not knowing they were there, okay? So in my opinion, to upgrade these lights, show chrome, trick LED, whatever, should supply quick disconnect connectors at that junction so that they can be easily unplugged by your service guy. If you went ahead and did it this way, please tell your service guy that you got those hooked up, or he might rip those up and be frustrated. So I did have to unhook those. Additionally, where I had mounted my Seibel air horn, I had drilled 2 holes and screwed them into part of the mounting for this, so I had to unscrew those. No big deal. It's just when I started lifting that unit out, I'm like, what are these wires still attached? And I realized they're my own aftermarket add-ons. So just a word of caution there to watch out for that, okay? Or any other aftermarket stuff you may have attached to the console unit, all right? So just a tip.